Good afternoon and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Mahmuda Khan. I'm the Executive Director of Human Concern International, Canada's very first international relief charity organization, and it is the very first Canadian Muslim charity to operate in Pakistan. With us, we have our MP, Heather McPherson. We also have a very renowned journalist from Pakistan, Iqrar Ul Hassan, as well as Eddy Pérez, who is the International Diplomacy Manager with Climate Action Network Canada. We have been very active and we've been on the ground right at the start of the recent crisis in Pakistan. A third of the country is underwater. 33 million people are impacted. 16 million children are victims of this climate change disaster, a very important topic that we're here for today. In advance of the United Nations Climate Conference in November, I'd like to express my gratitude to our distinguished guest here for taking the time to join HCI to discuss the impact of climate change on the humanitarian crisis in Pakistan and what more can be done by Canada.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Iqrar Ul Hassan, and I was on the field reporting about the flood situation in Pakistan. So thank you very much for having me. This humanitarian crisis is unprecedented in Pakistan's history. If I can tell you, 33 million people are affected, which is the majority of Canada's population. This disaster has displaced 8 million people in Pakistan. To provide further context, the size of the affected area is comparable to the United Kingdom. In the course of my reporting on this humanitarian and climate change disaster, I have met families whose life have been disastrous. Parents witnessed their children being swept away by the flood, particularly disabled children who were unable to swim and perished. I have met pregnant women in their final days before giving birth who in severe pain traveled over an hour through high water to seek medical assistance. Pakistan's Balochistan, Sindh and KPK provinces have primarily agricultural economies. More than 2 million homes, hundreds of bridges and roads, livestock and tens of thousands of hectares of farmlands are destroyed by the floods. It will take years to recover and rebuild. More than 2 million homes, hundreds of bridges and roads, livestock are destroyed. Agriculture in Pakistan contributes nearly 20% of the country's GDP and 38% of labor force. The majority of population in these affected areas depends directly or indirectly on this industry. Human Concern International immediately responded to this disaster, and due to its existence infrastructure, HCI was able to provide immediate basic health needs, aid, support without first raiding funds. Over 1,500 people have already lost their lives due to the flooding. The most pressing problem is that winter is approaching rapidly, and if there is no infrastructure in place to provide families with shelter, many more people will perish. Canada and the international community must concentrate their funding and aid on the reconstruction of permanent housing and the provision of income support so that families can return to their homes with the means to support themselves. Despite contributing less than 1% of global carbon emissions, Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries climate-wise. It cannot be left alone because we all are responsible for this climate change catastrophe. Canada has a duty to increase aid and take additional action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Khan. Thank you so much for the remarks. My name is Eddy Pérez. I'm the International Climate Policy Director within Climate Action Network Canada. Climate Action Network Canada is here to support HCI's call to action in response to what we have witnessed in Pakistan. It's actually one of those events in 2022 that are going to be there to remind us what climate inaction and delay is going to cause. As my colleague here just mentioned, Pakistan is responsible for less than 1% of global emissions, but it is a climate vulnerable country. You know, in 2022, Pakistan is also the chair of the G77, the largest group of countries within the UN system to represent the biggest share of population around the world. And, you know, at this moment, what we witness in Pakistan, it is a demonstration of the fact that within the UN climate family, within the UN family in general, there is no system at the moment to provide funding after climate-induced disasters. This is not just emotionally horrifying, but also politically terrifying. We're going to COP, which happens in about 10 days, and we're going to be asking the government of Canada to support the creation of a mechanism that helps mobilize and coordinate efforts to support people after they go through disasters. This is the call that Pakistan and other G77 members have actually made for years now, and Canada has blocked these efforts. But COP27 represents an opportunity. It is an opportunity to make something historic, bring hope to people around the world that are looking for a mechanism that can help people come back, restore, and recover after these disasters. We're just at 1.2 degrees of increase of global temperature, and this is what is happening. Canada must step up. They must show support for the calls that Pakistan and many other climate vulnerable nations are actually facing today. We thank HCI for this opportunity, and we can't dissociate anymore what we're witnessing right now with climate disasters and the fact that we need action right now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Heather McPherson. I am the International Development Critic for the New Democratic Party of Canada, the Foreign Affairs Critic, and somebody who's been working within the sphere of international development and humanitarian aid for all of my career, my pre-politics career, I guess you could say. And we're here today. I'm here with my colleagues up on this stage because what we're facing right now is an emergency, and it requires an emergency response. It requires the Canadian government to step up and do more. You know, as you've heard, we are heading into COP20. We're heading into COP27. We are heading towards an opportunity for Canada to step up and do more. You've also heard that right now in Pakistan that we have 33 million people who have been displaced by these floods. We have 2 million homes that have been destroyed. Over 1,500 people have lost their lives. You've also heard that this is not something that this is usual for Pakistan. This is completely a climate-driven impact. And you've heard that this was something that Pakistan did not contribute to. So a country that has contributed less than 1% towards global warming is having to bear the burden of the impacts of the climate crisis. So the Canadian government does have a role to play. You know, we have heard time and time again announcements from this government that they are going to step up and help with climate mitigation and adaptation. We cannot find the information on where those funds are going. We cannot get the transparency to make sure that those dollars are going out and that they're being used as effectively as they can for those people who are most vulnerable around the world. So that is the first thing that needs to happen. We also know that the United Nations is pleading with countries, with donor countries around the world to step up and provide the support that Pakistan needs right now. This is another concern that I have with our current government's response to international development and humanitarian crises. The announcements are made, but they are not delivered. We've seen that time and time again, that dollar amounts are announced, they are not allocated, they are not delivered, and they are certainly not done in a timely fashion. So I urge the government, I will be urging the government in the House and throughout my committee this week to think very, very carefully about how they can help the people of Pakistan and how Canada can be a leader in dealing with climate mitigation and adaptation for those countries around the world that are most vulnerable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for a really, really strong message that we're trying to get across for everyone in Canada. And as you have heard, I'm sure all of us, we have good intention, we have really good ideas, but what we really need now is good action and really fast actions. And that's exactly what HCI has been doing. HCI immediately responded in July when the floods began in Pakistan. We launched the Flood Relief for Pakistan Victim Project, and we prioritized aid for the disabilities, elderlies, and children. Our first stage of intervention has been focused on basic necessities such as delivery of food baskets, drinking water, hygiene items, and temporary and transitional shelter arrangements. We're redirecting donations now to health camps for pregnant women. You have heard the urgencies there for the pregnant women and adolescent girls, mobile clinics for remote areas, and temporary learning and safe spaces for children. If you're following the news, you'll see that children are most vulnerable right now as well. HCI has started on our second stage that includes the reconstruction of permanent housing and provision of income support to allow the families to return to their home and to allow the children to return to school. In our third stage, HCI will concentrate on community development, including investments in restoring health system and rebuilding infrastructure and social systems. The only reason HCI has been able to do this is because of Canadians have responded with such generosity that since we appealed the launch, we have already raised over 1 million. We still have a long way to go, and we know our Canadians will continue to be beside us. Today, we're calling to Canada, first, to increase its relief and aid to Pakistan in order to support the recovery effects and medium-term redevelopment projects. Second, expand its matching program beyond humanitarian coalition to give funds to trusted and experienced charities on the ground that are approved by the International Humanitarian Assistance Bureau of Global Affairs Canada. And third, for Canada, to urge the international community at COP27 to address the $40 billion in damages and accept responsibilities for the climate change impact that have exacerbated this crisis. It is time for all of us to get together and take actions together, amplify our voice and efforts together. We cannot wait anymore and let the people around the world suffer. Thank you so much. We look forward to any questions.
And we'll take some questions online. The first question, Dylan Robertson. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thanks so much for taking our questions, and sorry to not be there in person. I just wanted a bit of clarity. Mr. Perez had mentioned that Canada has blocked attempts at the UN to have this sort of a mechanism. Could you specify when that happened, what exactly the proposal was?
Sure. Yes, thank you so much. The Global South, countries in the Global South like Pakistan have been asking countries like Canada and the United States to create a mechanism within the UN systems in response to climate disasters. For over a decade, countries like the United States and Canada have blocked these efforts over and over again over fears of liability and compensation. This is actually one of the most contentious issues that we have seen since the adoption of the Paris Agreement. We have seen a shift from the Canadian government, and it is important that we actually say it, that the Canadian government has shown willingness to treat this issue as an issue of solidarity among countries around the world. But what that means is actually moving beyond just words and actually putting forward actions. That means committing to adopting at this COP27, which is what we're asking the Canadian government to do. If Canada really shifts its position on losses and damages and the response that is required, it is going to go to COP27 with two things in mind. The first one is calling for the adoption of an architecture to support people in Pakistan and in other countries that are facing climate devastation. And second, that is actually committed to funding, to putting money in this architecture so that it provides the relief required for people around the world.
Thank you. And I was wondering if I could get a bit of an update on Pakistan, just what the situation is looking like right now and where this is headed, because, you know, we've heard a lot at the very start that this would have a long-term impact. I guess we might the midterm now. If you could just tell us what it looks like on the ground now and what we can expect in the coming months from a humanitarian angle.
Yes, as I've been on the ground, I can tell you that the water is still there in the fields, in the factories, in houses, and the crops are destroyed by the flood. So the impact is going to, as we are an agricultural country, an agricultural based economy. So it is going to impact years to come, and I believe that. Canadian government, international, other countries, and different NGOs and organizations needs to come forward, and obviously they have to play their role to rehabilitation, for the rehabilitation and rebuild and reconstruct the economy, specifically for those areas who have been affected by the flood, and especially those areas who are, their economies are based on agriculture. So I think the problem is going to affect people the years to come.
And there are no further questions. This concludes the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you.